Lately, we were looking at something that we don't look at every day, and it's art. Real fabulous, good art. I know the 100-Year War of the 100 years of the World War One is over, and they were in France for the last several days, and I don't think um, there has been a lot of news outstanding. All the people have been there. So the thing that interests me is we were running into some real fine art, and all of it came from Nazi Germany when they took over. And where it went generally, this guy, the picture she showed you, Dirk Hanema, um, he worked with this art until from 1921 to 1945, and he ran a big art museum in um, a Dutch big art museum, Dutch, and that's where he was. And originally, he thought of maybe not getting hooked up with the Nazis over the paintings because he knew they would start bringing paintings out of Germany and get them out, and they were bringing them to several museums, several Dutch museums, and they would take the paintings. Um, so they had to have all kind of regulations against these things. Like supposedly they couldn't just take a painting where they know a guy's going into the gas chamber one day and his family brings all the paintings to them the day before that happens because um, and they sell it for about a real low price. It's crazy. I didn't know all this really went on about art and paintings with these ovens in Germany, but it did. And then, in fact, I didn't know that Hitler was so interested in art. But he had a girlfriend, Braun, and he sent her around the world on trips, generally to look at art. I didn't know Hitler had the fascination with real good art because it was there, and but he did. I mean, I knew he started as a painter, painting houses, but how he went into art, I don't know. But how he took over the whole German Empire, I don't know that either. Um, so, and actually, the Germans, while all this was going on, they were buying pieces of art and things like that, and they spent $138 million on it. So it's not a small piece of change, and that was during the 5 years that the Nazi occupation went on. Now another thing, like one day Hitler sent Goering, you heard of him? He's a big wheel,
Mm-hmm.
and he had he went to this guy Hanema. He's the head honcho in the Dutch, who you saw his picture. He went over to him and he asked him to assess the value of the works. There were three works, and he wanted him to assess the value uh, of these three paintings. And supposedly it was selling art to an occupier, and that would be the Germans. They were the occupiers, Hitler and them. Selling art to him was illegal, and actually, this Hanema sold him three pictures.
Mm.
Um, Sold this guy three pictures. He was a big um, German commander, and that was illegal. So after the war, um, Hanema was imprisoned for 8 months on charges related to collaboration, but the charges were dropped.
Mm.
So Goering came and he sold him, he figured out the price, and supposedly he sold him those three pictures for a reasonable price that was not trying to steal them. But this guy did all kind of things. this Hanema, and he was really hard to trust. So a lot of the museums, the Dutch museums, were set up by him, and there are pictures all over these museums. And then after the war, a lot of these Jews that owned the pictures, and they were taken away and somehow got to these Dutch museums. Now, I don't know if they were sold to them or they were just taken and then put in the museums at some real low number. So after the war, some of these heirs of the people that owned the pictures, now some of the pictures were owned, and these were real famous, expensive pictures, were owned by people, and they were put in ovens. So they took the pictures away, ended up in the Dutch museums, but then their heirs would go to the Dutch museums to try to get the pictures back. To say, these pictures belong to my family, they didn't get money for them, and I want to pick these up and get them back. Now, over the years, this has not been an easy situation, and they didn't just turn out and hand them the pictures. Usually it turned into a big fight, and most of the time, they could not get the pictures back, the family members, because they would say that we figured it out and we checked it and we worked on it, and your people got some money before they turned the pictures over, before they went into the oven, and it was paid for value for what they were worth. I don't see how what they were worth, because a lot of these pictures were worth a ton of money. Like here's a picture up here where a woman's sitting on the grass. That's a famous picture. And then here's another one of some houses. I mean, really famous, expensive pictures. And I don't know really what's going to happen, because you would think the German War was over in 1945. And no, this must have been settled years ago, because we're talking about 55-18. We're talking about 73 years. A lot of these things have not been settled because in a lot of the heirs of these people that owned the pictures and died, these pictures were taken away, sold, whatever, before they went into the ovens. But their heirs now want these pictures back, and they've been having a hard time, and they've been fighting the Dutch museums and the Dutch authorities for years to try to get their pictures back. And the Dutch people set up a special organization that was supposed to handle these matters, and you would write a letter to them and tell them the story like I'm telling you, and they just didn't run and say, no, you can come down tomorrow and pick up your pictures, because generally there were just so many stories involved. And the time period of 73 years, they can say, well, they sold them to this guy, he sold them to that guy, and then those people either donated them to the Dutch Museum or sold it to them for some price. But what you have to realize is we're talking about pictures that are some of the most famous in the world. I mean, it's nothing that a guy can paint in 5 minutes and just throw in a car and go downtown or something. And so this is they had a special group appointed supposedly to work on the return of looted works, and that was a special Dutch committee. But I never thought the Dutch were really involved that much as they were, and it's really a big item, because all their museums have a lot of pictures in them, really famous pictures, and naturally some of those pictures have a long detailed course on them, and naturally they don't want to take anything out of their museums, because like they say, like one guy had a real famous picture, actually he had 15 works, and they're trying to say, now the family's there to get back the pictures, and they're saying, no, we checked it out and said he voluntarily cooperated in October 1940 and went through an auction of all these famous pictures, which I don't believe. I mean, 1940s when the war started, and And then I think the two husband and wife that owned these, naturally they were put to death during the next 4 or 5 years at the camps, in the camps. And now the heirs are coming to get them. But another thing that surprises me too is that the German government spent $138 million on this art, and according to an art historian. So I mean, Hitler, believe it or not, he believed in art. He liked art, and he liked famous art. And that was one reason he sent his girlfriend Braun around the world on trips, looking at art, looking at pictures, and things like that. Because that's what amazes me is how he liked art, especially real expensive pictures, real good pictures by people that are famous, and they're more famous today than most people have been in the world. So I don't know. I think this is going to keep going because these Dutch museums are loaded with pictures, and the question is, who gave them the pictures? You know, were they donated? Did they pay for them? Because a lot of these people that died in the ovens, their heirs keep coming and writing and coming and coming, and they say, we want our family, our father and mother, they own these pictures the whole life, and we want them back. And they're not getting them back that easily, like we're talking. It's sort of, you got to go through a long, drawn-out process, like who got them, where'd they go, because some of the Nazis picked them up right off the bat. Before they killed them, put them in the oven, the Nazis took all their valuables, the money. Pictures would be one thing they're looking for big time, because as it turns out, if they spent $138 million on art, then they recognize the value of art, and Hitler really liked good art. But this will keep going. It has to, because a lot of these heirs, some of them are dying off, but a lot of them, they want to get their families' pictures back. Especially, they know they were taken. They know they weren't sold in a legitimate handshake sale, because this guy that run this big, that run the whole show, the Dutch guy, Dirk Hanema, they had statutes set up where he couldn't sell pictures that came into the museum to people off the street. But did he do it? No. He sold those 3 pictures to Goering, who was one of the biggest Nazi generals there ever was. He walked in there and he sold him, and they tried to put this guy in jail for 8 months later because of that, but then they dropped the charges. But this is going to keep going, and I really didn't know that the Dutch museums had this kind of interest in these pictures that went through the German 5-year war and the Nazi government. Thank you.